Good morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Preparing to Reopen Part 2. I'm sure most of you are aware that there were new regulations and guidelines put in place for some businesses reopening before the end of the month. Just a couple housekeeping things real quick. If you want to ask a question at the bottom of your screen when you hover around, there's a Q&A button or a chat. That you can also, if you want to ask that way, and we'll get to questions. But I will go ahead and let Trish and then Andy, they're both on here with me as well. They'll fill in, and if you guys have questions, let me know.
Hey, well, I think as everybody kind of knows, today is kind of the big day for consumer retail and service industries to start opening back up. And then later on in the week, back here on the 15th, hair salons, day spas, nail salons, barbershops, tanning facilities are going to be able to open. And then in terms of restaurants and bars, on the 15th, we're looking at outdoor dining being able to reopen. And then on May 21st, restaurants and bars for indoor dining will be able to open. Again, there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of guidance or guidelines that need to be followed in there too. So please keep those types of things in mind. But let's just open this up to questions. I'm sure there's plenty.
All right, we did have a couple questions come in. So we had a question about hall rentals, first and foremost. So with graduations and that kind of those events, we have some businesses that are eager to rent out their space. So are we able to start rentals of those spaces if we can limit how many people are in the event?
Again, I would say that within the Stay Safe Ohio order, it does still limit the number of individuals that can gather. So we're still limited to 10 or less. So that's what we have to be able to stick with. Andy, any other thoughts on that?
No, that's how I understand it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's your business,
are allowed.
Yeah.
It's like groups of 10, and then they would have to be partitioned by 6 feet.
And that order goes through the end of May, correct?
Through May 29th at this point. We don't know what restrictions at that point are going to be listed. I think I may have brought it up. I'm on a lot of these calls, so I'm not quite sure, but I believe I brought it up on the last meeting that we're not quite sure how they're going to incrementally step things like that up. If it might then get restricted to 20 or more, or 50 or more, and then up to 100. I still don't, we've not gotten the guidance, but I don't see them just opening it wide open right away on the 29th again. Again, 29th is not a magic date, but yes, again, if you can keep things to 10 or fewer folks, you've got to consider that, and reading in the guidance again who those 10 folks be coming together. It should still be relatively small and close-knit and everything. You should be able to know who's there. Those are things that I would say if it's a business that is grouping people together like that and it is for an event, maybe look at making sure you have the names and addresses of those folks and such, because if somebody does get ill, it would be a lot easier on their part to go back and be able to track and trace who has been there or who grouped together, who gathered.
All right. Again, if you guys have any questions, you can ask in the Q&A at the bottom. If you kind of hover on the middle of the bottom of your screen, you can ask it in Q&A or in the chat, either one. The next question we have that came in is, do bars have to have shield barriers up between the bartenders and the patrons?
That is not my understanding of it. I mean, that would be recommended. Anything would increase the distancing and but it's not required. They're supposed to maintain the 6-foot distancing, and then all the bartenders should be wearing facial coverings. That's required, which would protect the customer somewhat.
All right. And then they've mentioned limits on entertainment, but gambling pull tabs have not been mentioned. Are we still able to sell pull tabs during this time?
Again, I would say on the pull tab, they haven't stopped scratch off lottery ticket purchase sales, things like that at any of the gas stations and such. So I mean, as long as they're kind of sold in that same general method, there's not been any guidance or restrictions that I have seen, unless you have, Andy.
No, I have not.
Yeah, and again, it is considered gambling, but the restrictions on, say, the casinos and such are different, again, because people are gathered. There's a lot of people, condensed area, that type of thing. Just because it is a form of gambling doesn't necessarily restrict it. But yes, it is one of those things where, again, taking any kind of safety precautions in the passing out, in the taking in, everything like that, same thing as you would with cash and such.
All right. Thank you. Our next question is, where do you find the updated COVID-19 compliant floor plans?
There are not designated floor plans. You have to come up with your floor plan. Everybody's facility is very different. It's one of those where you have to be able to, if we're looking at something like a restaurant and having to be able to keep those groupings of tables 6 feet apart, those types of things. Again, the layout of your facility where you have fixed features, whether it be lighting, whether it be a bar that's fixed and set, there's nothing that's kind of stock and standard to say, here's exactly how you have to get this set up. It's, here's the parameters, can you make it work? Have you seen anything else, Andy?
No, it's my understanding, because every place is so different, that they have to have a written plan in place to keep customers or tables, groups 6 feet apart, or partitions and stuff like that if they can.
And that does kind of go back to the question on the bar and such. Again, if you've got people that are sitting at the bar, if the bartender's standing within 6 feet, trying to do things to limit or also increase the social distancing. So making sure that you've got 6 feet of separation, people aren't lingering or having to stand or sit near folks that closely for that length of time.
Okay. The next question is, with the maximum party size of 10, within that party size, what are the social distancing requirements for that particular group or party?
The party doesn't have to. If they're together legitimately, which is really going to be hard to determine, they don't have to meet social distancing.
Yeah, again, the guidance that's coming out of the state and what's within the order, they don't want people really gathering. It's a matter of that 10 or more. They'd like it to stay people that are within the same household together, that kind of thing. If people are opening things up and having people from multiple households gather together, they really have to look at things themselves. Is everybody safe? Is everybody healthy? Have you been going out and about everywhere? Those types of things. So those are personal decisions that they're going to have to make. But as a business, you also need to consider with your customers, what kind of restrictions you're going to put on them. So are you going to require masks be worn? I guess that's a question for you to look at and consider, especially if you've got people coming together in groupings like that. You know, are you going to request that they maintain some type of distance? Again, any little bit helps, but these are just things to kind of consider as you're looking at doing some of this.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not recommended that the 10 people be from different households or anything like that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it.
no.
All right. Once again, if you have a question, there's the Q&A. If you hover on the bottom of your screen, feel free to ask questions or even in the chat. The next question we have is the written plan to keep customers 6 feet apart. Does that apply for small offices with very few walk-in customers if you have floor markings and seating desk adjusted for the 6-foot requirement?
I think that is the biggest thing is making sure that you have those types of markings. It's very clear and apparent, but then also I think within the plans that people are kind of looking at, it also should be inclusive of, you know, what are you going to do if one of your staff members is confirmed? You know, what kind of things can you do in those cases? You know, who all did they come in contact with? Did you check temperatures? Things along those lines. Andy, anything else on that?
No. I think you just need to put in place what is required, which is the sanitizer or hand washing, the signage that says these are the symptoms, stay home if you have them. You just have to do everything that's required in there, and then it's up to your employees to comply.
Yeah.
And hopefully they all comply. So that's important.
Yes.
Our next question is, do bars have to have a barrier between bar stools?
If they are not 6 feet apart, you've got to have some kind of barrier, correct, Andy?
Well, my answer, because I've been answering these questions, was if it's like a husband and a wife coming to the bar together, they can sit on those bar stools beside each other.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, for each different group of people, they need to space it 6 feet apart or have a partition.
Yeah. And I guess that's the one thing when we're looking at bars, restaurants, any of these groups that we're looking at, you know, even the service entities, people that are same household related, you know, husband and wife, a mom and a couple kids, that type of thing. That's a grouping. That group is what needs to be 6 foot apart from another group. So if there's the one X on the line to come up to the next stall, whatever it may be, it's that group is there, and there should be that 6 foot of separation.
Okay.
Or a partition or barrier of some sort.
I'm going to throw out this as an example because I think this is kind of what they're getting at. So once restaurants reopen, let's say I want to go to lunch with Joe. Are we able to go to lunch and sit at the same table together because we've made that choice? We work in the same office setting, that kind of thing. Are you able to go to lunch with someone you're not related to at a restaurant?
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the thing. With restaurants, bars, we're not expecting the restaurants and bars to know who lives in the same household. There's no way to know that. So yes, if you as the consumer have opted to do that, is it recommended? Not really. But if you choose to sit down and have a meal with somebody that's not in your close contact household, everything, then you probably shouldn't. If it's somebody, again, we'll take your example there, Miranda. So you and Joe working in the same office. The regulations that are in your office setting right now are you should be 6 feet apart, masks on unless you're in your own room, in your own area. If you broke down and you were 6 feet apart in your office and then you decided to sit right next to each other at lunch and then you go back to your office and go 6 feet apart, that doesn't make much sense, does it?
No.
So that's one of those things where, yes, there's nothing it's not something that is truly enforceable for us to say, yes, restaurants, only people in the same household that live together can sit down and eat together. There's really no good way. Some people may tell the truth, some people may not, but it's one of those situations where consumers have to kind of take responsibility upon themselves to make a responsible decision. Again, that type of example I think is great. You know, if you're working, there's restrictions in the workplace right now. If you don't follow those same restrictions because you're on your lunch break, you're kind of defeating the purpose. And then have some issues down the road in the office space if one person is sick and you've contracted just because you had masks off eating and you were, you know, right across the table from each other, which is less than 6 foot. It's a concern, but something that people have to, again, take responsibility for themselves there.
Again, if anybody has questions right now, and if you hold your mouse at the bottom of your screen, the Q&A, that or the chat are both great options. With outdoor dining and bars and stuff establishing, what ideally would you guys be looking at for if a bar was to open with some outdoor seating? What would you be looking for to keep them in compliance, or what would you be looking for that would be like a violation?
I'll start and then I'll let Andy take over on this one. I think the big thing is you have to have the separation. You have to have the 6 foot separation between, again, groupings there. So that you have to do. Your employees, your staff need to be masked. Any kind of signage, if you're requesting that people, when they're not taking a drink, if they're wanting to wear a mask, again, whatever it may be, any kind of protective measures there. Like we talked about with seating at the bar, again, if they're related, yes. If they came in their group together and they're seated together, that's one thing. But again, partitions and such. It is going to be a little bit different, at least in our area, for outdoor dining and such. Again, you still have to meet all the same kind of guidelines that you would with outdoor dining that there were prior to, but also, you know, the distancing thing. I think that's a big major piece.
Right, you would still have to have the sanitizer out there and all the postings of the symptoms. Yeah, and definitely no more than 10 people in a group together.
The next question we have, is there a percentage of people allowed into the establishment, like a percentage of your fire code?
There is not. Ohio determined that they were not going to utilize that, again, because they understand that every business, the layout is very different. So the layout and how you could reasonably space people or groups of people with that 6 foot of separation, there's no magic percentage that would do that. So
they also didn't want to do that because those open spaces like dance floors and such are not supposed to be used at all. And that would be part of a fire code. So they don't want the standing people standing more than 6 feet apart.
Right. So that's
or less than 6 feet apart. Sorry.
No, we want them more than. But yeah, and you know, when these guidelines were pushed out, you know, they did have to look at all jurisdictions across Ohio. So, you know, when you do look at some larger facilities that have like a dance floor and such, well, can they expand out and put some tables here? Can they move this over here? How can things be moved and arranged? One of the things that we look at with like, once we go to dine in, the indoor dining or even outdoor dining is waiting areas. Where are people going to wait? So what kind of things are you going to have in place so that, yes, I want a table. Well, we have very limited tables at this point then. So say you only have 5 tables in an outdoor patio space and you've got 10 people that are waiting from different groups. Where are you going to have them wait? Are you going to have, take their name, number, have them wait in their cars, call them when their table's ready, those types of things. Because you do have to keep in mind that you don't want people standing around and congregating anywhere. So kind of those standing and sit down waiting areas need to look quite a bit different as well. It's not just your table where people are dining. And also, please keep in mind too that a large number of people are still probably wanting to do carry out as well. So if you have people coming in the same set of doors for carry out and they have maybe, a 2-minute wait for their food, where are they waiting? Are they waiting in the same area that the people that are waiting to be seated are? So how are you going to arrange that type of thing? So stuff to kind of pre-plan for. The indoor dining doesn't come for another week or so yet, but things to keep in mind when you're determining where you're going to move tables for spacing and that layout.
In reference to outdoor dining, it's Ohio and we, get random snow or wind, days. So what happens with outdoor seating if it starts to rain? Should we mark off places for people to flock indoors until they can get to their cars, like potentially like close their tab or however it is? Like, what would you suggest there?
I would suggest maybe patio umbrellas, things like that, and or some kind of awning. That awnings are still, outdoor. If people are rushing in, I think about this, when you have this during non-pandemic times, when you're outdoors and everybody kind of runs in and they're all kind of huddled together waiting. Well, what are you going to do? If it looks like inclement weather, I wouldn't suggest operating outdoor dining, but Andy, do you have other thoughts on this?
No, you're just going to have a hard time preventing people from running to shelter. So, I mean, it's just, not suggested. It's not suggested people go out as much as they probably want to, but.
Our next question is, how about pool tables? So do they have to be closed or can they be open during this time?
They have to be closed.
Yep.
All the recreation parts.
Yeah. So the same thing, if you've got a restaurant or facility where in the waiting area and such, if you've got, games or things like that for kids to play, those can't be utilizing them. So that type of thing. Same thing again with bars, restaurants, those that have condiments and such out on the tables, table tents, those things. Those have to be pulled from the table as well. So customers actually need to request the ketchup or request the salt and pepper or those types of things. That way they can be sanitized in between.
Okay. Another reminder, if you do have questions, Q&A at the bottom or the chat. We don't have any in right now. So have you ladies fielded any questions from various businesses that are planning to reopen that you think would be beneficial to all of us?
I have one that I don't think there's clear restrictions on, and it says if you have high back booths, do you still have to use every other booth, or what are the height requirements? And I it's not really specified, so.
Yeah. It's not specified, and I've talked with a few on that. It's, high back needs to be high back. Those that are kind of the low back booths, if they put the plexiglass in between, and it's, that's kind of what they were looking for. So just a regular standard booth size. If it's not, I would say above head level, it's not high back, then yes, you'd need some kind of partition or every other booth. One of the things that I've seen, just kind of, it may sound a little odd, but just kind of throwing the ideas out there, for the separation piece, there have been some entities across the state. They've kind of posted pictures using like the clear shower curtain in between, doing kind of a hanging from the ceiling, so that there's some kind of divide there if they can't get a hold of the plexiglass for like that type of a partition in between those. Some have looked at it, even if there is 6 feet of separation, being able to have kind of that extra barrier, that extra level of protection, doing something like that. Even in some of the barber shops and salons and such, even if they're doing every other chair, you know, and having 6 feet, again, because people spin around, people are moving about quite a bit, having some extra level of protection again for their customers. And I mean, that's what all this guidance truly is it's protection. It's protection for staff, it's protection for consumers all around.
Awesome. And we touched on the pull tabs on that, and those are okay because they're running kind of like lottery scratch off tickets. But any idea if club gambling like Keno is allowed, or is that considered entertainment?
I guess some of these things really depend on touch surfaces and such. So, Andy, do you know more on that?
No, and I've had questions about darts and everything because it only specifically lists billiards, card playing, pinball games, video games, arcade games, dancing, and entertainment shall remain closed. Well, they said since darts wasn't in there, is
Yes, darts are billion. That's that goes along with it. Yeah, again, it's a matter of the touch surfaces. That's why things like, no, we're not playing cards, we're not doing this, we're not touching the same pool cues, all that kind of stuff. Again,
so would the Keno be a video game?
And again, I'm not sure how Keno is set up everywhere. If it is the touchscreen video game stuff, I would assume not. We can seek out some guidance from the state on that and get back to you, just so that we have a more clear answer. But this is how we talk things through on a regular basis, guys. So as you hear Andy and I, it's, well, this could be, but what about this? How about this? Okay, this is what makes sense here. And then sometimes we do need to try to confer with the state and kind of see where folks are going. So I'll make a note of that and try to send that one off. So seeing if Keno is considered more the video.
I have also been asked about live music.
It's entertainment.
Well, and that was my thought, but they said, well, if they could still space the audience 6 feet apart, and I don't know.
Yeah.
And some of these restrictions, we don't have a lot of guidance as far as how long, but the one issued order, if you will, is through the end of May, correct?
Through May 29th.
Right.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate again because I think I do that well. Sorry. But so let's say you do have you've opened your establishment for seating, and then you have an unruly customer who is saying they have a constitutional right to be in your establishment and sit where they want and da 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 da. How do we approach that? How do we answer that? What can we do to enforce that?
It's up to the business to comply with this regulation, in my mind. So, I mean, I think it's up to them to, yeah. Go ahead.
And I think that's one of the reasons why posting some of those things is incorporated in this. So setting forth the guidelines that you have as a business, whether it's a bar, restaurant, consumer services, whatever, if you are expecting customers to wear masks, you need to post that. You need to make them aware that this is what you're expected, or what's expected of them. If you are expecting them to maintain 6 feet distance, make sure that they're aware of that. So putting these things in writing, posting it, very similar to, I like to go back to the no shoes, no shirt, no service type signage. Okay, if you have something like that, if somebody is irate and they want to be in there without their shirt on, or they don't have shoes and they want to be in there without their shoes on, what would you do then? This is the same type of thing. So if you would call law enforcement and say they're being unruly, they're yelling at my staff, they're running all over, what do we need to do? Again, that would be something where you would need to, I would assume you would contact law enforcement as you would the same as if they were breaking those types of rules or becoming unruly in those other circumstances. Again, most of these things, there's parallels with what we do on a regular basis.
I would also say that if they don't follow the director's orders, they can have their business shut down. I mean, ultimately, that's what could happen.
Yep.
And so it'd be like the no shirt, no shoes, no service per the constitutional right, correct?
In terms of, so typically day to day,
Like if somebody,
you have.
Right, if you say you have to have a mask, or we are only sitting this many seats apart, like we only have X number of tables, you just want people to clearly put those expectations out there upon entering into a business, correct?
Correct.
Very, very much so. Same thing too, again, and this is something that has come up in some other areas that have just recently started opening back up in other states, is people haven't seen each other for a while. If you go in and you're sitting down in your local spot, to have lunch, and you see somebody that you haven't seen in 2 months, don't come up to their table. Wave from a distance, things like that. So, if you've got the signage and you say, you must remain here while you're waiting for your table. You must remain at your table unless it's to utilize the bathroom facilities, things along those lines, and working through those types of issues. Just making it very clear and apparent. And that could even be something for like sit down, dine in, or patio seating, that you make it very clear to individuals, when their server comes up to them, okay guys, these are the rules we're going by too. They're posted. Let's just do a quick refresher. Here's things that you can do. Here's what we can't. This part's kind of off limits. But, you really have to express things to your customers that these are the things we're doing to comply so that we can remain in business. If you are not willing to help us comply, these are the things that could happen. We could not be here to be able to serve you for a period of time too.
Awesome. Does anybody have any other questions? We're kind of at that lull there. There's no more questions or chat going on. If you do, please go ahead and ask them. We have a captive audience right now with Trish and Andy.
I would say, Miranda, are you able to post up the mask do's and don'ts?
Give me just a minute and I will. So if you have something else you want to talk about real quick, I'll pull it up.
Yeah. So what I've got Miranda pulling up right now is it's kind of a mask do's and don'ts. This is something that we've seen with some other businesses, and this is something that people will call in complaints about, or send us complaints, or we just visually can see this when your staff, so looking at your staff and masks and face coverings and such, if you are expected to wear it, you also need to have them wear it properly. So that's, here you go. So when we look at this, here we go. I'm going to make mine a little bigger so that I can follow along. So kind of down there, don't touch the front of the mask. You shouldn't be touching the front of that mask all the time. Don't pull it down. I have seen so many masks being worn just covering the mouth and not the nose. Don't hang it from one ear. Don't pull it up here. Don't just hang it down around your neck, those types of things. So it's important that it be worn properly and that you're not touching it all the time. You're not pulling it off, those types of things. Again, personal protective equipment is as good as it is. You have to wear it properly in order for it to be as effective as it should be. So just try to consider that, keep that in mind. If you see your staff that are out there and they don't have it covering their nose, or they've got it just kind of hanging down, or they pulled it down whenever they're talking to somebody and then they put it back up and they're touching the front of it constantly, you should not be doing that. So try to keep that in mind. Kind of give them the heads up, let them know that they should not be doing that.
I pulled the other screen up. Can you see the other one then?
Yes.
I can. Don't know
It's
why.
the my mask protects you, your mask protects me.
That I do not see.
Give me a second. Let me.
All right, there it is. So this signage too is something that the chamber office developed, and it's, again, it's great. This is something, another piece of signage that I'm sure you can utilize. I'm assuming get a hold of Miranda for it. So again, it's my mask. I wear my mask to protect you so that my droplets aren't coming through to you. You wear your mask to protect me. So if you are requesting that your patrons wear a mask, this is something that kind of, it's something for folks to keep in mind. Your staff are valuable, their families are valuable to you, so trying to help protect them as much as you can, I think is really a sign and a symbol. It's respect of the business, it's respect of the families, the individuals themselves, that you're doing something to protect them. So again, just tried to come up with some language that explained it a little bit more. So,
And we'll send both of those out with follow up from here. And then we'll post those on our social media pages when we get this clip upload or this YouTube uploaded this afternoon. We'll make sure all of that's included. So if you guys want to print them out or post them up at your establishments, you can do that.
awesome.
All right, anything else? Just thank you, ladies, for doing this again. We might end up doing this again in the future as more guidelines come out to us, or once we get the okay to whatever normal is.
Well, and if we start getting a lot of too, I think that's something where maybe we can reach out to you as well and say, hey, okay, we've gotten a number of questions. Let's put something together so we can kind of try to address it.
All right, last chance for questions. I don't see any coming in. So with that, thank you all. Once we get the recording of this, we'll make sure we repost it again, and we'll send out the face mask things.
Great.
Thanks, Miranda.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye. You too.